Gooen is here. She's the author of Searching for Bubby Fischer. She's held various administrative jobs in hospitals and universities and written freelance articles on medicine, sports, and travel. She's worked as transportation director for a JCC day camp for several years, but she never found her true passion until she sat down at a Mahjong table. Karen took her first book, Searching for Bobby Fischer, to JCC, Sisterhood, and Hadassah events all over the US. She subsequently wrote 2 Mahjong table talk tales, Small World and Take Two, novels about mothers, daughters, and unexpected friendships. She refers to them as Mahjong rom-coms. That was a tongue twister. Karen is a life member of NCJW in Hadassah. She and her husband have been married for 30 years, and she lives in Morris County, New Jersey. Shout out New Jersey, and has 2 adult children and 2 Havanese dogs who happen to be mother and daughter. Please welcome Karen Gooen.
Hello. Okay, this is going to be a little bit tricky because I can't see you all, so I'm going to make a few assumptions about you. First of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I even wrote this book, and then I'm going to be giving a speech about the 3 psychological benefits of the game. So, I started playing Mahjong. I'm not like some of you. Some of you may have learned at your mother's knee. I actually didn't learn until 2003. A friend of mine's husband had a weekly poker game, and she was like, "This isn't fair. How come he gets to have fun every week? I want to have something for myself." So she asked me if I would take Mahjong lessons with her at our JCC in Metro West, New Jersey. And I just took to the game like crazy. I loved it. We had a weekly game, and I was really getting it. It just was a great game, and I really connected with it. So after about 6 months, 6 months, I'm a great player. I've been beating my friends. I decided I was going to try a tournament. So I drove about 2 hours to Long Island, where there were some daytime tournaments. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with what a tournament is. The idea is that you're playing against different players all day long, 4 hands at a time, and then you switch tables, and you play another 4 hands, and then you switch tables again. It was 8 rounds, which is 32 hands of Mahjong over the course of a morning and afternoon, which is a lot of Mahjong. And for a rookie, it was way too much. It was like Zoom. People were throwing Mahjong tiles at me. They were so frustrated with me. I compare it to when you're driving on the highway and there's a big truck bearing down on you and, honk, honk. That's the way I felt. I was so stressed out. I didn't enjoy it. And I came away from the experience saying, I still love this game, but I'm not very good at it. And I want to be good at it. So I decided I was going to try and become as good as some of these people that I played against. But of course, I'd already taken my class. I didn't know what else I could do. I started looking for Mahjong books. You go to the bookstore, or there used to be these things called bookstores. You would walk in, and there is, tons of books on bridge, and books on chess, and books on computer poker. I mean, slot machines even. Every kind of game there were books on, but nothing about American Mahjong. Remember, this is back in 2003, before Elaine Sandberg's book, so there was really nothing available. And I said, you know what? I'm a writer. I'm going to write the book that I wish I could read. But in order to do that, I do have to get better at it. So I decided I was going to keep doing these tournaments and trying to play with better players and pick up tips along the way. And then I would be able to write a book that hopefully would help other people in my situation to become better players. And along the way, I learned a lot. And when I ended up publishing it, it turned out to be that people who even had years of experience, people who'd been playing for 30, 40 years, I showed them things that they hadn't thought of. So it really benefited both beginners and experienced players. When you go to the toy store and you're looking for a toy and it says this toy is for ages 7 and up, or this toy is for toddlers, I tell people that this book was originally designed for people with 6 months to 4 years of Mahjong experience, but really anybody will get something out of the book. So anyway, I'm going to start talking about my lecture and telling you a little bit more about my book as we go along. But first, I'm going to do a real quick posting. I'll do it several times during the lecture. I'm going to give you a link to my email and my blog. And you can always read my old blog articles, which also include my email. Or if you ever have a question, you can email me directly at my email address. So I'm going to post that real quick, and then I'll get back to the lecture. So here we go. That is my blog address. It's It's actually easier to just type in Bubbe Mahjong blog, and then you just get the link right away, but that is the URL for it. And the other thing, the bubbefisher@gmail is my email. I answer it pretty quickly. I can't imagine a day going by that I wouldn't answer your email in less than 12 hours, probably more like 45 minutes or less. And I'm certainly more accessible than when you try to reach the league. You know, they're not even answering the phones right now because they're not in the office. So if you ever have a question about Mahjong, that's how you reach me. Just email me at bubbefisher@gmail.com. Okay, so we are going to talk about the psychological benefits of Mahjong. And there are 3 numbers I want you to keep in mind while I do this lecture. The 3 numbers are 3, 20, and 70. So first I'm going to talk about 3. I consider that there are 3 main psychological benefits to Mahjong. The first one, I imagine you know where I'm going with this, is the cognitive. This is a game that is endlessly challenging to us cognitively, and by that I mean, learning wise and intellectual wise. It's a wonderful game for us. I do not know of any other game that reinvents its rules every single year. I mean, can you imagine if poker said, oh no, this year aces over eights are what you want to get. Forget about having a royal straight flush. You want to get a full house with aces over eights. There's no such thing as changing a hand. There's no, in poker, there's no real big changes to bridge. But Mahjong, at least American Mahjong that we play, changes its object every single year. And in doing that, we have to forget the old one, learn the new one, learn to think critically about our tiles in a new way, be creative. It's an amazing game for us mentally. And the fact that there's 65 hands that we have to figure out which one works best for us. We do probability, we do analysis, we are looking defensively at what other people are playing. It's a creative game, it's an intellectually stimulating game, and it can all be done in 10 or 15 minutes. It's an amazing, amazing game for us cognitively. And what I like to say is when I get a hand, when I get dealt a bunch of tiles, it feels like it's a bunch of dreck. I like to tell people it's like you have to turn straw into gold. You've got this rack full of tiles that mean nothing, and you've got to figure out something and make it into something that means one of the hands on the cards. It's wonderful for our brains to be creative that way. And I know, being the JCC, this is a Jewish group, but I have found in all my travels, I mostly speak to Jewish groups, but I will tell you that the single most common occupation among Mahjong players is teaching. They're not all Jewish, but there are a lot of retired teachers. If I could see all of you right now, I would say, how many of you are teachers? And I guarantee at least 40 to 45% of you would raise your hands. It's amazing. Teachers love this game because, again, creative, problem solving, following rules, needing structure, but always using your mind. So there, we've got number 1, cognitively very healthy for us. That is a definite psychological benefit of the game. Now, the second psychological benefit, maybe more like a half a benefit these days, is the social. I've been doing this lecture for 5 years now, and COVID's been tough. When we had our regular game, when we could see our friends once a week, or some of us have 3 or 4 weekly games, different groups that we play with, you get into a rhythm with people. You can see who's having a good week, who's having a rough time. You can share things at the Mahjong table that you might not say anywhere else. I like to say it's like Vegas. What's said at the Mahjong table stays at the Mahjong table. So you can confide in your friends. You can say things that you might not say otherwise. Like you can tell them about something that's going wrong with your daughter-in-law, or you could say something about a local doctor maybe that you wouldn't want to talk about in the general population. But at your Mahjong group, you can trust them. So that's obviously a real nice social benefit. But what if you're new in town? What if you don't know anybody? What if you don't have a nice regular weekly group? The beauty of National Mahjong League is once you know the rules, you can take your card and go anywhere. I have played with people in Hawaii. I have played with people in Canada. I've played with people Pacific Northwest. I've played in Texas. I've played in New England, Midwest, Milwaukee, wherever. It's as long as you know the rules, you can use that card and walk into any clubhouse, into any senior center, library, any group where they're playing Mahjong. You are up to speed with everyone else. But that's only if you're using the regular Mahjong League rules. I do have some pet peeves about table rules. So I would say if you are teaching someone, teach them the official rules. You can always change things and say, okay, today we're playing with table rules. One of our table rules is if you roll double, you pay double. Or you could say, okay, we're playing with table rules that some people do the mush at the end. That drives me crazy. But you could say, okay, we're going to have an optional last little mush exchange even after the final pass. So there's all sorts of different table rules, but you need to know the essential main rules. And now I will give a little break and say real quick about Florida. I don't know how many people in Tennessee end up going down to Florida, but you know, Florida plays different than anywhere else in the country. And when people call the National Mahjong League and say they're calling from Florida, they basically say, we can't help you. Because part of the problem with the Florida players is a lot of them play a 14-tile game where they throw and then pick. And that's a totally different mindset, different strategy, different rules. And so since they're not playing the official rules, it's very hard to help them with their questions. So I'm not a Florida 14-tile player, but I understand the game. They say they like it because it goes faster. Anyway, that's a whole separate issue. But socially, a Florida player can find other Florida players. So it's a real wonderful thing that once you have this card, you can play with anybody. I want to give a little quick history lesson to some of you. You may not know that National Mahjong League is not the only American version of Mahjong. The game came to the United States in about 1920. Babcock, I'm forgetting his first name, I apologize. Mr. Babcock brought the game to the country and it caught on really well. A lot of people were playing it, they loved it. It was popular with rich people, poor people, young people, old people, very popular game, but it sort of lost favor in the 30s. The two main groups that continued were the Jewish ladies like us, and they veered off and had the National Mahjong League. The other version that really caught on was among, I'll be sexist here and say, it's the military wives. Back then it was the wives, I mean, the men were in the military, but their wives would play. And what they would do is they would have their own version with their own card, and they called it Wright-Patterson, after the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is just outside of Dayton, Ohio. And the idea of the Wright-Patterson rules was if you had that card, you could walk into any military base anywhere around the world, and you could play against other families of American servicemen. They had a card like ours, like the concept of a card, but their card only changed every 4 or 5 years. They had slightly different rules than us. For instance, they do not use jokers. Their flowers mean something different than ours do. And they have some things in their hands, you know how we have 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind pairs. They have something called a chow, which is what we call a run, like 3, 4, 5, or 6, 7, 8. But to them, that is as valuable as a pung or a kong. So theirs is a little bit more like real Chinese style Mahjong, but they still use a card like we do. So anyway, again, having those cards makes it a social opportunity that you can play against anyone, anywhere in the country who has the same card as you. And it's wonderful. You can make friends that way. You can have an activity. You feel more connected. And so now during COVID, I call it a half of a psychological benefit because we're not quite as connected as we used to be. I know a lot of people are playing online, and a nice way to do that with your regular group is to say, okay, we're all using the same online version. We're all going to log on to it at about 2 o'clock and look for each other's username and set up a virtual table together, and then we can have our game. And sometimes they will even Zoom or do FaceTime or something so that they can still have their conversation while they're playing, which is, for a social group, that's the most important part, really. I mean, it's great to play with your friends and all of that, but it's really important to have that social connection. But I'm going to start talking a little bit more about one of the numbers now. I told you that the first number was 3, and we're in the middle of talking about the 3 psychological benefits, but now I want to tell you something about the number 20. What I like to say, and what I found, is that over time, with a group of people who are equally strong players, over time, I'm not saying every week, but over time, you should expect to win about 20% of the time. That's where the 20 comes in. That should be your goal, winning 20%. There's going to be wall games. There's going to be weeks where you could do no wrong. You win literally half the hands, if not more. The jokers keep coming to you. You keep on making great choices. You're winning a lot. But there are going to be weeks where you're a little weak. If you find over time that you're only winning 5 or 10% of the games, there's a problem. It may be that you're not an aggressive enough player, you're not calling for tiles soon enough, you don't have backup hands, you're not reading what's going on defensively with the other players. It may be that you're not Charlestoning properly. There's all sorts of reasons why you're only winning 5 or 10% instead of the 20 that you should be winning. And if that's the case, I recommend getting my book, because it will help you to spot the weaknesses in your game and to figure out how to become a better player. What I love is when I lecture at places and somebody buys the book and a couple weeks later she says, "Oh my God, my friends didn't know what happened to me. I won 3 hands last week. Nobody expected that." So I love to hear that it really does help their game. It's very important for them to be a little more mindful, and that's part of what the book is talking about. So that's where the 20 comes in. If you will find that you're not winning enough, get the book. On the other hand, if you find that you're playing with your same group and you love your friends, but you're winning 50 or 60% of the time, there are 2 things going on. One is that you're not really challenging yourself. It may be that you've gotten so accustomed to this group and how they play. You know, we all know that Sherry loves the wins, so nobody pass the wins to Sherry. Or we all know that so-and-so only does this kind of hand, so we don't pass her those tiles. So that you're in a rut. Even if you're winning a lot, you're still in a rut. And what I recommend is keep your group, because they're social and they're your friends and you love them. But I do recommend trying tournaments or even trying a more advanced group just to keep your skills up. Because honestly, it isn't that much fun to win all the time. It's fun to share the wealth. And in that vein, if you're winning that much and you're playing for money, use some of your winnings to buy your friends the book. So, okay, so that's the second psychological benefit, is the social. Now, the third that I feel doesn't get a lot of attention, and it's very important, is the emotional benefit of this game. Mahjong is an amazing distraction. When you are playing, you are so caught up in that game for 10 or 15 minutes that you don't care about whether, what the biopsy results are or what his SAT scores are going to be. Or, I mean, let's face it, there are a million things going through our minds these days. I mean, with quarantining and all. So while you're playing Mahjong, you're so focused on the game that everything else just sort of disappears for a few minutes. That's really healthy. Another thing is that you're focusing your attention on the game. You're like, oh, if I could just get that flower, I could win this hand. And that too is healthy, because you know what? Either you are going to get the flower and you're going to feel great, or you're not. Somebody else wins the hand. You go, oh, and you throw in the tiles and you start again. There will always be another hand. There will always, 5 or 10 minutes later, you get another chance to win. So building up all that, frustration, but letting it go because you're getting another opportunity, super healthy. But like I said, if you do win, you get this tremendous sense of affirmation that you did it. You get some endorphins because you accomplished something. You feel good about yourself. Altogether, a very healthy activity for you, for your emotions. Now, 20% of the time, you're going to win. So keep that in mind when you're playing and you get frustrated that you're having a really bad day or that so-and-so is always winning. Really think about it objectively. Are you winning about 1 out of every 5 hands? Then that's good. If you're not, maybe work on your game, but nobody should expect to win every single time. So hopefully it helps you to remember that you're not going to win every time. But now I'm going to get to the 70, which is the most important lesson that Bubbe has. 70 speaks to what I've figured out over time. A lot of people say this game is luck. This game is mostly luck. And I agree, it's mostly luck. I would say 70%. The reason I came to about 70% is we only see 1 out of every 4 tiles. We get dealt, 13 or 14 tiles. We only pick 1 out of every 4. Once in a while, we have the opportunity to call for something or exchange for something. So there are those opportunities. But in general, so many of the tiles are out of our control. It is totally luck, whether I just need a south and she picked it, and I have no control over that. There are just things out of your control. But if 70% of it is luck, then 30% of it, or a maximum of 30% of it, is within your control. And what I try to teach you in my book is how to maximize that 30%, how to be as on top of your part in the game, the skill part. And the big famous Bubbe saying is, luck favors the prepared mind. It's like a fortune cookie. Luck favors the prepared mind. What that means is you got to learn to think about the game more analytically. You've got to understand the card better, think about all of your options, anticipate things that might happen so that if a lucky tile comes your way, you will know what to do with it. I've seen players get 4 or 5 jokers, 6 jokers even, no idea what to do. The timing is off, or they'd already settled on a hand and they're stuck. And they don't have an opportunity to switch, or they don't know how to switch because they haven't thought about what to do. They haven't anticipated what they might need. If you are more prepared, if you've been thinking about what to do, you have a much better opportunity of winning when those lucky tiles come to you. So the same person, 2 people with the exact same tiles dealt to them, person with more experience, with more practice, with more thinking about the game is definitely going to do better with it because she's prepared. And so by preparing, what I mean by that generally is know the card. And every year in my blog, which again, I'll put a link to, every year when the new card comes out, I will put several different articles on the blog about the brand new card. I'll talk about illegal exposures. I will talk about what I call ambiguous exposures, which is important for defense and for switching your hand. Sometimes you can have 2 or even 3 exposures, and it could be more than one hand. So it's really important that you understand that that could be happening. Understand how the different hands on the card interact. I also talk about how to learn the card quickly. It is so important to be able to focus on your tiles instead of on the card, because I've seen players, you're looking at the card, you're looking at your tiles, you're looking at what's thrown out, you're looking back at the card. You're spending all your time worrying about that instead of focusing on the actual game. The better you know the card, the more you can focus on what's going on around you, including your rack, everybody else's rack, and what's being discarded. If you're wasting your time looking at the card during play, you're not making the most of your opportunities. The other thing is not to be afraid of playing any one section of the card. I have literally met players who only play one suit. And I mean, not just only one suited hands. I mean, she only likes dots. She doesn't understand cracks because they look a little like wins. She doesn't like BAMs. She only plays dots. So hopefully somebody's laughing at that. It is absurd, but that is how some players are. So the better prepared you are, the better you know the card, the more willing you are to learn every section of the card, the better your chances of winning. So I hope I've made it clear, the 3, the 20, and the 70. I hope you'll remember those numbers. And the next time you're playing with your friends or talking about Maj with your friends and you say, oh, I've had the worst luck. It's like, well, you know what? Maybe you need to be preparing or thinking about it a little more. Or did you really have that bad? Did you really lose 80% of the time? Because that's understandable. But remember, 20% is all you should really fairly expect to win. Anyway, I wanted to open it up for questions and answers now. Were there any questions on the YouTube?
There were no questions on the YouTube, Karen, but there were a few from before.
Okay.
So feel free, anyone watching live, to ask a question now. But let me ask those. Well, you kind of touched on this, but why don't men seem to play Mahjong very much?
Oh, that's a funny question because it's not actually. I don't know why. How do I get to be me? Okay, that's fine. There I am. Okay. It's Jewish men that seem to have this mental block on the game because in China, it's mostly played by men. I have friends that teach in the Midwest, and it's not a Jewish game there, and anybody plays. She said that she has engineers as students, she has accountants as students. Anybody that loves numbers and puzzles and things like that loves it. It's not inherently a female game. But if you ask a Jewish man, you always get this, 1 BAM, 2 crack. My mother played it every week. Every week I would hear the ladies in the living room playing, and they'd tell me I had to stay in my room. And I think that's what it is. They feel like they were excluded from it as young men. And so now they're embarrassed. They don't want to be part of it. It's a ladies' thing. I mean, we all know they would eat the snacks afterwards. They have no trouble eating the snacks, but they didn't want to play, and they didn't want to be tied to their mother's game. But the fact is, there's nothing inherently female about it. It's just traditionally in Jewish culture, it's been a women's game. No reason a man couldn't play if he wanted to.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So we, as I mentioned when we spoke, we have a pretty robust Mahjong group here, but and instructions, I think we've had one man, and I don't think so. A couple other questions I had. We have a player who always slows down the game, but can't seem to make up her mind.
Yeah.
So throws everyone off. Do you have any suggestions on that?
Yeah, I think some of you will know what I'm talking about, where you have somebody who's like, oh, and she's probably going for wins, but when she picks up a 7 crack, she still gets confused. Like every single tile is a major ordeal for her. I've actually written articles about people like that. I call them Hamlet. Do I want it? Do I not want it? It's very, very perplexing for them. My Mahjong instructor told me it's not rocket science. Keep the game going. It's more of an etiquette thing to sort of stay up with the rhythm of everyone else, because it's true, the rest of us playing will lose our train of thought if it takes too long. What you may find if that player has been playing for a long time and is suddenly starting to not be on top of things, it might be a sign of something going on cognitively. You might want to check in with her family and say, is everything okay? She's been a little off lately. On the other side of it, it may be that this is just not the right activity for her. She might feel pressured that you all are going too fast, or that she doesn't really love the game and she's not really into it. I mean, I talk about 2 versions of the game. There's a wine game and a coffee game. And a wine game, I mean, everybody's there to have a good time. And if we get through 2 hands in a night, that's fine. It's very low key, very, very social. But a coffee game, even though I don't drink coffee, I play a coffee game. A coffee game means we're here to play. We'll take a little break for a nosh, but we are here to play. And in a coffee game, keep the rhythm going. We're going to finish maybe 5 hands an hour, if not more. And if somebody is not a coffee player and she's in with your game, if she's a wine player and she's with your coffee game, maybe find a different activity to do with her. Say maybe we should go for a walk, or just find something else to do with her other than Mahjong, because it might not be her game. It's a tricky situation, though, especially with somebody you've been playing with for a long time. I feel your pain.
That's really interesting, actually. A couple more questions, if you don't mind. Sure. So you mentioned playing online during COVID, but also how can, once it ends, how can you prepare to play in tournaments?
That's sort of related to the whole thing with the slow player. If you tell your group that you're trying to get up to speed for playing at a tournament, hopefully that'll resonate with people. Say, the problem with tournaments is there's a time limit, so I really want to see if we can get through games quicker. And maybe that would help this particular person be more decisive. But for you too, you need to play a little more decisively, be a little less chit chat, especially after the game. When you finish the game and there's one winner and everybody else is like, oh, who had my 5 bam, or who had my 2 crack, or whatever. When they're doing that, I call that being Quincy, the medical examiner doing a postmortem. You don't have time for postmortems in a tournament. You want to keep playing. So you say, okay, we're not going to do the chit chat. We're just going to set up the tiles again. So that can speed things up too. The main thing is to be a little more decisive, to really know the card so that you're not making foolish mistakes. And the other really important thing with a tournament is to trust your instincts and know that you are a good player, and don't kick yourself, because everybody makes rookie mistakes at a tournament. It's just very common. But I do recommend it, especially for good players. It's a good idea to expand your skill set by challenging yourself, raising your game to another level.
Okay. So how would people, if they don't like playing online, I imagine some people don't, but they're not getting together with their groups right now, how would they keep their skills sharp?
I have this thing in my book, I talk about it. It's really helpful for learning the card too. You got to really love Mahjong. But if you really love Mahjong, but you don't like the online version, there's something I call Charleston Solitaire, that I say, set up your 4 racks, put out 14, 13, 13, 13, and you're going to go through a Charleston on the table with all 4 racks. You are going to pretend that you are each of the 4 players. You have no vested interest in the success of any one hand. You are maximizing each of them. So going through the Charleston, you're learning the card better, because you're learning all these different hands simultaneously, but you're also learning to think more analytically. I play this game, the song runs through my head every time I do the Charleston. It's that song from Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. You look at your tiles and you start thinking more critically, and you figure out, okay, what doesn't go? Okay, this I'm passing, these I'm passing. It's a really good exercise for you. And sometimes if you've got the time, you could go through the entire game. And the funny thing is, the hand that you think would win at the end of the Charleston doesn't always win. It's very interesting to see how luck plays such a role. You pick up 3 flowers or 2 jokers, changes the hand entirely. It is a very interesting thing to watch as a hand develops. And if you do this Charleston solitaire game and turn it into a regular game, you will see the development of 4 different hands simultaneously. It's a very interesting exercise. Again, takes a whole lot longer than an average Mahjong hand, but it is very interesting. So I recommend that if you've got the time.
Okay, thank you. We got a question on YouTube. I have my mom's Mahjong set. In the world of Mahjong, are old sets valuable, and do people like playing with them?
Oh yeah. Well, it depends how old. I mean, I don't have a copy of my book right here, but the cover of the Bubbe book is my grandma's old tiles. My mother didn't play, but she saved my grandmother's tiles. And then when I said I was learning to play, she said, "Oh, take your grandmother's tiles." They have a lot of sentimental value for anyone. And some of the old sets are gorgeous. This set behind me isn't actually mine. I saw it at a tournament. And if anybody knows a lot about tiles, they can see that it's a pretty modern set. They have personalized jokers, but it's a pretty modern set. The older sets, you'll know that it's truly an older set if it doesn't have real jokers. Back in the day, there were no jokers. There were 16 or sometimes even 24 flowers, no jokers. So what happened was people would take their old jokers, their old flowers, and I know with my grandmother's set, she painted over them with red nail polish. She made 8 of them into jokers by painting them with red nail polish. So that's how you know a set's truly old, is if it has no jokers. But yeah, there's all sorts of tiles out there that you can collect. Older sets, brand new sets that are very stylish. I don't know if you are a part of a Facebook group, but there are several collectors Facebook groups online. You can find out all sorts of things. You've got my email address now, so you can email me if you're looking for the Facebook link, and I can put you in touch with some Mahjong collectors if you're interested, because yeah, they are beautiful. I've seen ivory sets. I have seen, the Bakelite sets, plastic sets, bamboo sets, and they all have stories behind them. That's what's so great about the older sets, is that they have a history to them. When I run a tournament, I want a plain vanilla set because then everybody knows exactly what they're getting. But the old sets have so much character to them that they're a lot of fun to play with.
Well, okay. The questions are coming at me from different places. So
okay.
Final call for YouTube questions, but I got one via email. So what is your opinion about the bots on realmajong.com?
Oh, that's the one I play. I play that, and people have been asking me about that. I don't think that that's smart. I don't think that they are like in AI, where they talk about, it learns and it doesn't make the same mistake twice. And I think they're not programmed for defense. So they might throw you a tile that in a real game, no one would ever throw you. I'm not quite sure how they come upon choosing their hands. That's another thing. When we're playing with our friends, we might choose a totally different hand than someone else would. And I'm not sure how the bots determine what hand they're playing. But I know if I've been winning all day, I might take a crazy risk. I take crazy risks to begin with. But if I've been winning all day, I might just go for a singles and pairs or a quince just for fun that a bot might not go for. You see what I'm saying? That they will not challenge themselves as a bot that you and I might, because we're people. I like to tell people that playing singles and pairs is the single most aerobic thing you can do at a Mahjong table, because your heart is racing as you're getting closer to completing it. It's extremely exciting. I know it sounds weird, but if you're a Mahjong lover, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, the bots are interesting. The thing I love about playing the bots is there's no obligation. I used to play on the National Mahjong League site, and the problem with that was, A, people were rude. If you didn't have a high enough ranking, they would up and leave the table and not play with you. But B, you had an obligation to them that if your internet went out or if you had to take a phone call, you had to just stop the game and walk away, and you were letting people down. And that's a lot of pressure. The nice thing about playing against bots is they don't care if you leave. There's no obligation. So I definitely recommend, if you've only got 10 or 15 minutes to play against the bots. You'll keep your skills up, and you won't be letting anyone down if you have to leave. So
Okay.
that's my opinion on bots.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Another got is, are there certain snacks served that are Mahjong standard snacks? My mom always had chocolate covered jellies and Entenmann's Entenmann's coffee cake.
Ooh. I was taught popcorn and M&Ms because they're quick on your fingers, and now with COVID, all bets are off. I used to love to tell people that the two most important things in Mahjong are fetching and noshing, but now I don't know how much we can actually be putting in our mouths and playing. It's probably not going to be like that ever again. I really don't know. I've heard the stories about the pineapple with the little the maraschino cherries under the toothpick and all that. That's a very popular one. I've heard bridge mix. I've heard raisins and almonds. All those things are very popular. But at my table, there's always popcorn and M&Ms plus. But we start with popcorn and M&Ms because they're easy. And the salty and the sweet is a nice counterbalance.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I just have a couple more questions. You mentioned the Charleston. I am not a Maj player myself, so if you kind of address this, I apologize. But what do you think about stopping the Charleston after the first left?
Okay, some of you know people that do that a lot, and there are some people that drives them crazy. It's really common with rookie players. I think everybody but Alex knows this about Mahjong, that there's this thing called the Charleston. That's how you start the game. Everybody passes tiles around, sort of shaping their hand before the actual play starts. And it's got two parts to it. You pass 3 times, and then you could stop, or you could keep going and do 3 more passes. But if you stop after the first 3, you're sort of leaving other players high and dry. They haven't fully shaped their hands yet. And when somebody stops after the first 3, they have that right. We all have the right to stop the Charleston anytime we want. No questions asked. It's always your choice to do it. But you need a really good reason, I feel. Because if you're stopping it because you can't make up your mind between 2 hands, the chances are very high that you will not win because neither of your hands was strong enough. And what I call that is Charleston karma. That it's the Maj gods are telling you, you shouldn't have stopped that Charleston. You don't deserve to win. So be very careful about stopping the Charleston. Even if you've got 9 or 10 of your tiles, there's probably something you could pass away. Sometimes if I'm going for singles and pairs and I'm getting close, I still might pass away a flower because I know I have as good a chance of getting it back, more of a chance of getting it back than any other tile because there's 8 of them. Another thing is if you're playing for an exposed hand, you can pass away the 4th. If you have all 4 of something, like you're going for 8 cracks and you have all 4 8 cracks, you could pass away one of the 8 cracks because when it gets discarded, you can call for it. All of those things make it really, really not necessary to stop the Charleston. I would say if you stop it once or twice a session is reasonable at most. And I'm not talking about one player, I'm talking about the whole table. If the whole table only stops it twice during a whole session, that's still pretty high. I've gone, months with my group with nobody stopping the Charleston. So that's my opinion. I really feel like Charleston karma will bite you if you stop it too often. That's my opinion.
Okay. I think those are all the questions, but I did get a couple of comments. So
okay.
One of them is that from Frances Hahn, she said she's been playing at realmajong.com and that it's been helping her to get to know the card.
Excellent. That's great.
Good. Okay. And then Howard Pink and Robbie Lasky had said that they're enjoying your knowledge and insight. So
well, I would recommend, let me just say, I would recommend if you like, I speak and I write basically identically. So check out the blogs. And if you like the style in the blogs, get the book. And if you're enjoying the book, the reason I wrote the novels was when I went around the country talking about the book, people said, oh, we love the stories in the book. You should write more stories. So I wrote 2 novels about Mahjong players. So they're not as educational. There's still some lessons in them, but they're more like fun. It's like if you miss playing with your friends, it's fun to pick up a novel about Mahjong players. So that's what the come on, Small World and Take Two are strictly fun Mahjong novels. But there's a lot that you can learn just plain from the blogs, but also if you decide that you want to get the Bubby book, there is a lot in there too. So thank
Great.
you for saying that you're enjoying learning. That's nice to hear.
Can you put up your email address one more time? So just a
Sure.
reminder everyone to buy Karen's book, to please email her. Okay, so there it is.
Right, I do sell all the books directly, and I'll give you a nice price because you're friends of mine. They are available on Amazon too, but it's easier to buy from me. You get a better price. And then my blog, there are literally 50 or 60 articles on there. Some are about the new card every time, but there's all sorts of other topics. Everything's Maj related. So, and absolutely next spring, if there is a new card, there will be some analysis of the new card. Every year I do that.
Great.
There you go. I'm gonna unclick it now.
We have one more question for
Okay.
you. Where does the Bubby Fischer name come from?
Ah, okay. So when I was writing the book and thinking about what was it that I was really doing, you know, how I was looking for a mentor, I was looking for a teacher. I had in my mind this little old lady, you know, I'm pretty old now, I'm 55, but at the time I was, you know, 40. And I thought, you know, there's this lady in her 60s, early 70s. She's got her glasses on a chain around her neck, and she's, you know, she loves to play Mahjong. She's got pictures of her grandchildren everywhere. She's got a great attitude. She's going to teach me everything she knows. She's going to be my Mahjong mentor. And in my mind, she was a Bubby. And then I was trying to figure out the title for my book. And I was like, oh my God, Searching for Bobby Fischer had been this book about chess. And I was like, how perfect is this, Searching for Bubby Fischer? And I'm self-published. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to get this book published soon because somebody's going to steal the title because, you know, there's so many Mahjong books out there. I had it in my head that someone was going to steal the title. So I immediately got the book out as quickly as I could. But yeah, Bubby has become sort of my nom de mage. So, you know, when people ask me to lecture, it's like, oh, Bubby's coming to town, or I'm going to write a note to Bubby. It's just become, even though my children don't have kids yet, I'm sort of known as Bubby. So, but Bubby Fischer and Bobby Fischer, that's where it comes from.
I love that. Okay, well, those are all the questions, and you've
Great.
done a great. Oh, it's tough speaking to yourself in the screen in the audience, but you've done a great.
I like my jokes.
I like them too. Thank you so much, Karen. And I just want to remind all the viewers to let your group and all of your friends know that they can watch this online on the same YouTube link anytime later on. So, and to email Bubby Fischer later on if you have any questions.
And I hope someday to come to Nashville and see you all in person.
I hope so too. We'd love to have you for